The city skyline was poised for transformation. Plot 42, a prime piece of real estate nestled in the heart of the metropolis, had been earmarked for a monumental project, a high-rise commercial tower that promised to redefine the urban landscape. The responsibility for bringing this vision to life rested with Urban Line Constructions, a company renowned for its ambitious projects and uncompromising standards. At the helm was Junaid Khan, the CEO of Urban Line Constructions. A man in his early 40s, Junaid was the epitome of corporate success. His sharp suits, meticulous grooming, and authoritative demeanor commanded respect. Having invested millions into the project, he was determined to see it completed ahead of schedule, setting a new benchmark in the construction industry. On the ground, overseeing the day-to-day operations, was Anger. Riaz Malik, a seasoned professional with decades of experience in the field. In his late 50s, Riaz was a stark contrast to Junaid. Clad in a hard hat and reflective vest, his hands bore the calluses of years spent on construction sites. He valued safety and precision over speed, believing that a solid foundation was paramount to any structure's longevity. From the outset, tension simmered between the two. Junaid's relentless push for rapid progress often clashed with Riaz's cautious approach. The CEO's frequent visits to the site were marked by terse exchanges and veiled criticisms. Riaz, for his part, remained steadfast, prioritizing the well-being of his crew and the integrity of the construction process. The initial phases of the project progressed under this strained dynamic. Excavation work commenced, and the foundation began to take shape. However, unforeseen challenges soon emerged. Delays in the delivery of steel reinforcements, coupled with unexpected underground water channels, threatened to derail the timeline. Junaid's frustration grew palpable. He convened impromptu meetings, demanding explanations and pressing for solutions. Riaz, maintaining his composure, presented detailed reports and proposed adjustments to the schedule. Yet, the CEO's impatience overshadowed these efforts, leading to further discord. The construction site became a microcosm of their conflicting ideologies. Workers sensed the underlying tension, which began to affect morale. Some tasks were rushed under pressure, resulting in minor errors that required rework, further exacerbating delays. As the weeks progressed, the situation reached a boiling point. During a routine inspection, Junaid confronted Riaz over the slow pace of work. Voices were raised, and the exchange drew the attention of the entire crew. The confrontation underscored the growing chasm between corporate ambition and on-the-ground realities. Despite the challenges, the project continued. Both men, driven by their respective convictions, remained committed to their roles. The foundation was eventually completed, symbolizing not just the physical base of the tower but also the complex interplay of vision, execution, and human dynamics. The shrill sound of sirens faded slowly as Aryan stood on his new lawn, heart thudding beneath his sweat-soaked shirt. The officers had just left, offering a brief apology for the misunderstanding, though the weight of judgment still hung heavy in the air. Across the street, Mrs. D'Souza stood like a sentinel, arms crossed, lips pursed in silent defiance. Her eyes followed Aryan's every step as he returned to his moving truck, as if daring him to make one wrong move. What should have been a joyous new beginning now felt like walking into enemy territory. As he hauled another box toward the porch, he noticed the twitch of curtains in neighboring windows, silent observers, whispering in private shadows. It was clear, the street had already chosen sides. Aryan had been marked as an outsider. That night, the excitement of moving in was swallowed by anxiety. Boxes sat unopened in the living room as Aryan sat on the floor, eating takeout from a paper box, surrounded by half-unpacked memories of a life he'd worked hard to build. The silence of the house was thick, not peaceful. It wasn't just walls and floors anymore. It was a place now haunted by a sour first impression. The next morning, Aryan stepped out to water the small garden bed under the front window, hoping to establish some kind of normal routine. But normalcy remained a stranger. He noticed how the man jogging by didn't return his wave. A woman walking her dog crossed the street rather than pass in front of his home. Even the mailman kept interactions minimal. The message was subtle but clear: he wasn't welcome yet. Arian tried not to take it personally, but it wasn't easy. Each cold glance reminded him of the flashing police lights and Mrs. D'Souza's accusatory voice. Still, he wasn't one to give up easily. He began tending the yard, trimming overgrown hedges, repainting the mailbox, and even fixing a broken garden gnome he'd found under a bush, small signs to show he cared about the place. He hoped the neighbors would notice. A few did. An old man from 2 houses down gave him a slight nod one evening. A teenager on a bicycle asked if he had Wi-Fi. But for the most part, Willow Creek stayed silent. Then came the notices. Anonymous complaints slipped under his door. Your trash can was out too early. Your porch light is too bright. Arian knew who was behind them without needing proof. Mrs. D'Souza, with her rigid sense of order, was determined to make him feel out of place. But Arian reminded himself of why he moved here: for peace, for stability, for a place to call his own. He was determined not to let prejudice and paranoia rob him of that. On the 3rd evening, he placed a welcome mat at the front door and left a tray of bottled water and snacks near the porch for delivery drivers. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was a start, a silent invitation that said, "I'm here, and I'm not your enemy." Whether the neighborhood would ever respond, however, remained to be seen. The days that followed Arian's rocky arrival in Willow Creek passed slowly, marked by a heavy, watchful silence. Although the police incident had ended with no charges and clear documentation of Arian's ownership, the stain of suspicion clung to him like a shadow. He continued unpacking, decorating, and tending to the home he'd dreamed of for years, but the air outside remained cold, not from the weather, but from the eyes of the neighbors. Smiles were withheld, greetings were avoided, and his presence felt like a disturbance in an otherwise picture-perfect postcard of suburban life. He noticed the same people who once waved eagerly at each other now turned their backs as he approached. Children were called inside when he walked by. Conversations hushed the moment his footsteps echoed on the sidewalk. The only sounds were the distant hum of lawnmowers and the judgment in every closed window. Arian tried to push through it, reminding himself that he was here for peace, not approval, but the weight of silent exclusion grew heavier with each passing day. Still, he refused to hide. Arian began working on the house with quiet dedication, repainting the porch rails, planting flowers in the front yard, hanging wind chimes that danced in the breeze. His actions spoke volumes where words were absent. Occasionally, he would smile at passers-by, even if the gesture went unreturned. He waved at cars that didn't slow down. There were no complaints about loud music or messy yards. In fact, Arian kept the place pristine, almost to a fault. But it didn't matter. For some, especially Mrs. D'Souza, who continued to glare at him from her window throne, the first impression was final. The petty complaints resumed. A notice from the WA about his garbage bins being left out 15 minutes past collection, a warning about trimming his hedges, unevenly, and even a letter suggesting that his choice of door color was too bold for the community aesthetic. Rather than fight back, Arian met these subtle aggressions with quiet resilience. One morning, as he was setting up a small bird feeder in his front yard, he noticed an elderly man across the street struggling to corral a barking dog. Without hesitation, Arian jogged over, gently caught the leash, and handed it back with a kind smile. The man, startled at first, gave a grateful nod but said nothing. It wasn't much, but it was the first sign of something different. Over time, little moments like these began to build, small cracks in the wall of isolation. A teenager waved back one evening. A woman jogged by and said, "Nice roses." Even the mailman lingered for a second to ask how the move was going. Yet, the street still felt like it was holding its breath around him, waiting for him to fail or leave. Arian could feel the chill in every glance, but he had made a silent promise to himself: he wasn't going anywhere. And if he had to thaw this neighborhood one gesture at a time, then so be it.